What's going on, everyone? So the San Antonio Spurs made some real moves, and I believe are going to take some real strides. Now, are they a contender? I don't really believe so. Now, could they, get into the playoffs? Sure. I wouldn't be shocked if they made the playoffs. Could they, get the right matchups? A couple dominoes kind of fall their way, and all of a sudden you look up and they're in the, conference finals. Something you never know, right? I mean, we've seen stranger things. I mean, Atlanta was in the conference finals a couple years ago, right? And they struggle to make the play in now. But I really do love the moves and acquisitions, particularly Chris Paul. I think that's the best move they could have made as far as long-term growth and development, how easy he's going to make things for Victor Wembanyama. Harrison Barnes is another guy that plays his role. He's not going to take away from Victor. He's not going to take away from Vassell or any of these guys. He's a guy that's going to be able to come in, play his role, play his part, and do it well, in my opinion. And the Spurs clearly, yes, they want to develop, right? This is a bit of a development year, but they clearly want to win too, right? They didn't just go and get some washed up guys that, they want to just work with the youngins and just let the young guys get some run. No, they got guys that can help and play and are expected to help them win more now, right? Now, again, I don't necessarily see them as a contender, but they are supposed to win a lot more than 22 games or whatever they won, right? So it'll be interesting to see how much better they got with Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes. But there also have been the Spurs kind of shopping around, right? And kind of seeing, like, okay, is there any other moves out there, right? Lauri Markkanen was a player that was linked to the Spurs for some time. And you look at, like, the Spurs cap situation, right? And right now, total cap space, minus $4 million. They are $27 million under the first apron, 37, almost 38 million under the second apron, right? So they have some wiggle room still. They can still pull off some things. They were shopping Keldon Johnson. There is a real argument to get off of, Zach Collins, right? And I don't hate the idea of them inquiring at least about Brandon Ingram. And now, before you go, absolutely not, no way, crazy Tyler, walk with me for a minute, okay? Because it's not just the idea of like Brandon Ingram coming in and paying him a bunch of money. No, right? Let me explain. So, Brandon Ingram, I think, again, increases the ceiling for the Spurs. I think the Spurs would be much better. Obviously, there's concerns about his health, right? But if he can stay healthy, at least enough, right? Chris Paul, Devin Vassell, Brandon Ingram, Harrison Barnes, and Victor Wembanyama, that could be tough. Like, seriously, that could be tough. And Brandon Ingram would give them a sizable, versatile wing that can go and hit shots and close down the stretch and take pressure off of, Wemby and other guys, right? He's a guy that you can give the ball to and just go to work. When he's locked in and engaged, he can use his size, his length defensively. It'd be very long. There's also the questions of, like, what are they going to do at the 4 spot? Right? Do they go with Jeremy Sohan? Do they, move Barnes to the 4 and then, go with like a Keldon Johnson or something, right? Do they go with like Zach Collins and then have that? Do they go with Stephon Castle? I think if you went and got a guy in Brandon Ingram, you could slot him in at the 3, move Harrison Barnes to the 4 because he's got 6'8" size, right? And then there you go. Now you have that versatility, you have that switchability out on the perimeter. I think you have like legit scoring options. I think you're in a good position. The New Orleans Pelicans are desperate to get off of Brandon Ingram. Desperate, right? The New Orleans Pelicans just had to be fair, voluntary little mini camp. And everybody was there except for Brandon Ingram. Daniel Tice wasn't there either, but he was just signed. So it was expected. They expected Brandon Ingram to be there. They thought he was going, and he just didn't show up. And he wants out. His team has been actively looking for a trade. The Pelicans want to get rid of him, have been actively trying to find a trade for him, and no one wants to bite because he wants 40 plus million a year. And look, he is not worth 40 plus million. But I think with the Spurs, it's a win-win across the board. And here's why. So one, I think if it works, right? You can essentially let him kind of, if he wants to explore free agency, go ahead. Who's giving you $40 million a year? Good luck to you. But if you want to come here and you want to stay and you want to make, $25 million a year, sure. Right? We'll give you that. Again, assuming it works and it's great and it's like, all right, hey, we should probably keep Brandon Ingram. Right? You'd be able to get him dirt cheap. You're not losing anything. But more than anything, if he walks, clear salary space. I mean, you're already going to be a team that has salary space, but wouldn't hurt to clear some more. Free agency next season could potentially be very good. Obviously, there's, with the new CBA, teams get to kind of negotiate early. So, we'll see how many are still on the market. But free agency next season is shaping up to potentially be at least a solid one, right? So you'd clear more salary space. You wouldn't have to give up much to go get Brandon Ingram. And if it works out and you re-sign him, cool, right? You sign him on a reasonable deal. You kind of let him go out there and see what's available. And if he walks, no big deal, right? You don't lose anything because, again, you're not going to have to trade 5 firsts and all that. No, you're basically like, hey, we'll guess what you need. You need a center. And we have a guy in Zach Collins. The Pelicans, don't have a center. They don't. Are they going to run Zion at center? Maybe. But they don't have, a legit... They lost Valanciunas, and that was kind of their only, real center. They have a couple young guys that maybe, but at least Zach Collins could kind of fit it in a pinch. But here's the thing. You'd get off of Zach Collins' money, right? So you're trading a need that they have, and you're getting back the better player. You're getting back an all-star level player. And if you can unload Zach Collins and his money and his contract, then, again, you're fine center position, right? I think you're in good shape, right? I think you go do that. If you could essentially turn a package centered around Zach Collins into Brandon Ingram, why wouldn't you do that? Because, again, if it works, great. Not only did you get off of Zach Collins, but you just got an all-star level player to pair with Wemby for the next couple seasons, right? Now, obviously, when I say if it works, it also comes down to Brandon Ingram and his health, right? Brandon Ingram only plays 40 games a season, then no, right? And even then, I don't know if I'd sign him up to a long-term deal, right? Brandon Ingram's probably going to be the first, real casualty for the new CBA, right? He's a guy that probably would have gotten 30, 35 million. Right? Some team would have taken a flyer on him. But now, new CBA, he's not getting that. Right? He'll probably be 20 to maybe 25 million. So if you're the Spurs and it works out, and you essentially put a package together where you're swapping Collins and Brandon Ingram, right? Why wouldn't you do that? Seriously. I don't hate that. And then again, if it doesn't work out, right? Okay, no big deal. The expectation isn't to win a championship this year, right? No one's necessarily expecting. Now, do people think that they have a possibility? Do people think they want to see them? Sure. But there isn't this, people aren't looking at the Spurs and going, oh man, they're a top 5 contender. No. Right? So if Brandon Ingram comes and it doesn't work out, who cares? Who cares? Right? You let him walk. No big deal. And you just cleared $18 million off your cap space next season for a team that already has cap space. Now you're basically flushed. You re-sign Chris Paul to another year, and maybe you go get another star or two. Maybe you go get a couple pieces. Maybe you can work it out to maybe be a contender. Or, guess what? Now you have, $36 million expiring contract at the trade deadline you can trade, right? Teams aren't willing to take on Brandon Ingram right now, but at the trade deadline they might. And the Spurs have a bunch of picks. What if a star becomes available that does make sense? What if the Phoenix Suns end up imploding, right? Getting Brandon Ingram on the Spurs might be a win-win across the board for the Spurs, right? Because again, his contract, which, sure, all of you are aware that he's expiring, but he's making $36 million. right? Like $36 million expiring, plus, Keldon Johnson's money if you needed to or wanted to, and plus you have all these picks and Atlanta's picks and all that, right? Like, you could easily, like, if a Devin Booker became available, you could just go get Devin Booker, right? Like, hey, here's Brandon Ingram, so you don't have to, sell the farm and give up all this money or take on all this money, right? Like, so now you get to clear some salary space, give you like a Keldon Johnson, maybe you throw in a handful of first, boom, just as a guy, as an example, right? I'm not saying that he'll even be available or anything like that, but my point is that, like, you have, like, Brandon Ingram would give you flexibility in several different ways. Gives you flexibility in the sense of clearing more cap space, gets you off of Zach Collins' contract, but it also, if it works, you can just keep him, sign him to a new deal, right? Like, it's a win-win-win across the board, right? Like, you're not in a position where it's like, oh man, like, like if he was on a multi-year deal, no, I tell you, stay as far away from Brandon Ingram as possible. But Brandon Ingram being on, an expiring deal, again, you could potentially trade him, or even just, let's say a team is willing to pay him, right? Okay, could you work out on a sign and trade? With the new CBA, you're going to see a lot more sign and trades than you would have in the past, right? So now maybe you get, a second or 2 seconds for Brandon Ingram, right, for facilitating that trade. And you didn't have to give anything up. Like, if I'm the Spurs, I'm not giving up any real assets. I'm not giving up firsts or anything like that. But maybe if you had to give up like a couple seconds or something, sure. Okay. Maybe you throw him a young guy like a Harrison Ingram or something. Like, sure, okay. I don't think that's a big deal. But, if you can essentially get Brandon, I think you do it. Like, genuinely, I think you do it. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you think, like, like Brandon Ingram makes a lot of sense, right? You go kind of round out your starting five. On top of that, you get off of Zach Collins. On top of that, you get some flexibility, whether it's through trade or free agency and salary cap space, or, if it works out, you can re-sign him to a reasonable deal. Again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos. Truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.